Ladies, on March 27th at the Golden Gate Club in San Francisco, I invite you to join a room of trailblazers, executives, entrepreneurs, and visionaries who are rewriting the rules of money. Hear from real women who've built wealth through real estate investments, scaling businesses, and creative financial strategies. And learn from industry leaders who have walked the path you're on and who are ready to share their playbooks. You'll engage in intimate panels, fireside conversations, and curated peer-to-peer matchmaking designed to spark meaningful connections. Leave with our wealth creation toolkit packed with actionable resources to help you prioritize your goals and take immediate steps towards financial independence. Now, your journey doesn't end when the day is over. Each of you will be invited to join our online Catalyst community, where you'll be guided through more educational opportunities and times to be able to connect with each other over the course of the next few months. Wealth creation is about opportunity and community. Now, early bird tickets are $9.99 through February 27th. Don't wait. This is your moment to build confidence, community, and wealth. Apply now at women.win and use the code SHAMA25, that's SYAMA25, to get a 25% discount off the early bird price. The Women in Wealth Catalyst Summit, ladies. It's time to redefine wealth and redefine your future.
Welcome to Getting Rich Together, the show for successful women who are looking to take their financial futures to the next level. I'm your host, Shama Bunton. When I started my wealth building journey, nobody knocked on my door to give me all the answers. So I want to talk to the experts who've done it and bring the answers to you so we can discover the right opportunities that will help us achieve the financial futures we've always dreamed of together and have fun doing it. So let's dive into this episode and start getting rich together.
I am here today with the prolific, beautiful, and brilliant Divya Gugnani. Divya, you are known within my communities as being a fearless founder, a really deeply committed investor, an incubator of brilliant ideas, also a loving mom, and just a kind and generous person. So Divya, thank you so much for making time today to be on Getting Rich Together. I'm so happy to have you.
I'm so happy to be here. And I have to tell you, my favorite part of that description was kind and generous person. I hope that my footprint that I leave in life and the mark that I leave in my community is that I'm a kind and generous person. That's what I'm focusing on.
I love that. And so most people know you today as being a serial entrepreneur and someone who's done some of the things that most business owners can only dream of. Being able to exit, being able to start other businesses. It's so dreamy, exciting, and stressful. And before we jump into sort of the day-to-day and sort of what's happening today in your life, I'd love to take us back to a time where maybe you didn't know you were going to be a fearless female serial entrepreneur, maybe a time around the age of 5, 6, 7 years old, Divya. Where were you? Where were you growing up? What was life like around you? Spill the tea.
I was living in Long Island, which is where I grew up, a suburb of New York City. And I was a shy and introverted child. My parents were like living their best 80s, 90s life and having parties and like enjoying. And there was lots of food and drinking and smoking, and all those vices were all happening all at the same time. And I was hiding in the kitchen and I learned how to cook. And I actually have a big burn on my arm from when I was 8 years old, and I was cooking in the kitchen and my parents were having a big party. And I was just the opposite of my sibling she was polished and put together and loved to like entertain the crowd and chat with my parents' friends. Like I just hid in the kitchen. I hid in the kitchen. I loved food. I loved to cook. I loved to be serving and helping and just like be busy. And it's so fascinating that so many entrepreneurs come to me at all different times and stages in their life and tell me but do I really have the DNA to be an entrepreneur? I'm second guessing myself. And I genuinely believe that entrepreneurship comes in all forms, shapes, and sizes. And there is no one cut mold. We all think that the quintessential entrepreneur had a lemonade stand and was hugely successful and had 3 businesses by the time they started their first real job out of college. And that's actually not true. I had 0 businesses and had never sold anything and had never built anything and never had a successful lemonade stand and never had the confidence for any of that. And it is with my career and finance that I became a sponge and learned and listened and grew and had some immediate success, which happened incrementally and sequentially, that helped build the inner confidence to then go out in the world and become an entrepreneur and become a serial entrepreneur and a CEO 5 times.
Wow. So then what kind of student were you what kind of young girl were you when you were coming into, let's say, the awkward ages of middle school or starting high school? I mean, were you deep in the books? Were you doing the cheerleader? I'm going to go hang out.
Oh, no. I was, captain of the track team, co-president of the debate club. And I did lots of extracurricular activities. I was deeply immersed in my school community. I loved sports. I played volleyball. I ran track. I did cross country. I loved being on a team. And that was really like the foundational bits of what I think helped me for success later, is that I was always on teams. I was on debate and I was in all these clubs and I was, playing sports and captain of the sports team. You learn how to take direction. You learn how to work with people. You learn how to coach, mentor, and all of the above.
Wow. Was it in high school then? When did you start to have this inkling of, this powerhouse of being on teams, which I think is something that we should be focusing more on with kids these days, right? I mean, in terms of being able to build these skill sets. When did you start to get the inclination around finance? Was it always a love of numbers? Was it always like where did it come from to sort of fall into the track of finance?
Oddly enough, my entrepreneurial story is one around romantic relationships. And there's like a pattern here. It's so funny. Like I was dating a guy in college. I would have thought I was going to go to law school. I was going to do LSAT. And I just dating this guy in college, and he interviewed for an investment banking job and he got a job on Wall Street. And I went to visit him in New York after he graduated. And I was like, oh my God, black chauffeur driven cars and expense account and all these things. Ooh, this looks very dreamy. And I was going to do an internship in investment banking. I'm good at math. And that's literally how I fell into it. How funny is that? It was not at all my path. I was studying policy analysis, which is a mix of government and economics. And just the exposure from the romantic relationship of someone else's career gave me a glimpse into what could be my career. And that became my career. I took a job in investment banking at Goldman Sachs after I graduated Cornell University.
Wow. Oh my gosh, I love that. And so as you were growing up, being really focused in these areas of schooling and obviously then excelling in your university career, was the conversation around money, like personal finances or money, were there ever conversations at home? Were you a kid on an allowance? Was it, Divya, let's sit down and study the stock market, or let's talk about sort of budgeting? In what sort of ways did conversations around money come into play, let's say, before you had your career?
So I learned what not to do from my parents. So I really think that it's so fascinating because my parents were immigrants. They came here from India, and my father was a massive risk taker. He, came here for an engineering degree. He got an engineering job. He lost his job due to a government change in the administration because he had he was in a governmental job, and then he just went out on his own. And this guy was unstoppable. He took risk after risk. We lived in Springfield, Illinois. We moved to Long Island. My father built, a successful garment business. He was vertically integrated because he had family members who owned every part of the chain, from dyeing the fabric to, the factories to the end product, which he then sold into department stores and large big box retailers. And he just took risk after risk after risk. And there were highs and there were lows, and there was no form of budgeting. And the life of excess was one of that time. Those kind of late 80s, 90s was the time of excess.
I mean, I remember Robin Leach, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, Robin Leach. I mean, that was, that marked the time.
We were flying here and there on these lavish vacations, and then, there'd be difficulties in the business, and that we'd really feel the pain of that. So it was a lot of ups and downs. And I think what I learned from all of that is to have a more responsible relationship with money. And I think early on, I was frightened by my parents' entrepreneurial experience. My father's kind of ups and downs really put the fear in me that I wanted to have 2 kids and a white picket fence and a stable job and, like budget everything and have retirement savings. I think that watching the boom and the bust real time actually totally shied me away from entrepreneurship. I was like, I'm never going to be an entrepreneur. I want to have a job. I want stability. I don't want to take risks like this. I don't want ups and downs. And it's so funny because I went down that path and then ultimately my DNA and my inner, desires led me to starting companies. And then it's like a disease. Like once you start it, you just can't do anything else but work for yourself. I mean, I sold a company at one point. Literally, I sold a company at one point and could have just retired after building and successfully selling a business that was a life-changing outcome for myself and my family. And I could have just raised my children and invested my time in my passion projects and philanthropy. And I just was itching to start another business, which is how I actually ended up starting Wander Beauty. And once it's within you, it's hard to contain. I always tell entrepreneurs that they say to me oh, when should I start my business? I'm not really sure if I want to do it or not. I'm like, when you're awake at night and you can't go to sleep because you're so excited about your company and your idea, you just can't think about anything else. It's in your blood, it's in your bones. You're just dying to do it. It's an inner drive. And that inner passion and drive is what ultimately makes you successful because you don't give up and you're consistent and put the time and the energy into it. And if you put time and energy into anything, you will be successful at it. And so, that's really what it was. But I learned what not to do. And now if you look at my life and how incredibly methodically I plan my finances, I had children, I set up trusts for my children. I did all sorts of estate planning when I sold 2 companies. And I just did all the things my parents never did because I learned and I taught myself and I became a student of you treat money well and money will treat you well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so obviously moving from, working in finance and sort of having that safety. I mean, we both know corporate jobs are never safe, but when you're good at what you do, there's a market for you. And so there's a sense of safety. And then there's obviously the transition from safety and moving into the entrepreneurial world. And so talk to me about your corporate setup. Were you the one who negotiated for more salary? Was it always, I'm going to, were the buckets there? I'm going to put this money in this bucket and this bucket. Were you really sort of stringent with how you looked at finances in your corporate world? How did you sort of navigate some of the personal finance aspects and then also self-advocacy as you're in this world of finance, which, as we all know, is predominantly not filled with a bunch of women?
I had a really hard time. I really had a very hard time with this because I felt that the pay gap between women and men in finance is dramatic. I think it has narrowed in the 20 plus years that I've seen this evolve in my career. However, in the early stages, it was dramatically apparent. You would be a woman, you'd work just as many hours, you would put your head down, you'd do as many deals as possible, and then bonuses came around. And you had to work twice as hard to get top bonus. And I just felt that was just what it was. And I advocated for myself. I worked incredibly hard. I think the key to my success and my early financial success is that I could outwork anybody. I was like, I have a set amount of raw intelligence that I'm working with here, and I'm just going to really outperform, because that to me is going to be the hallmark of who I am and what I am. And you can rely on me and you can depend on me, and I'm going to get the job done. And that also is very important. And I'm going to be meticulous and check my work with the type A Virgo that I am. And I then went on to later stages in my finance career, and I became more savvy about advocating for myself and asking and advocating and negotiating.
And is it hard? The first time you did it, were you scared?
It was always hard. I don't think it's ever easy. And I also think as an employer, I go through that daily. So every day I'm working with someone across some team and, who wants to be paid more or needs more, or, has had life circumstances change. And I always try, first of all, I so appreciate it. I believe that everyone should advocate for their worth. But I do believe in one incredibly important principle. I believe that if you demonstrate success in your career, then you can advocate to be paid commensurate with that success. I do believe you have to put in the work and yield the results to then have the negotiating conversation. I think so many people come to the table with like, I want, I need, but then like, what do you have to show the other side in terms of what you have done and achieved and what the results are? Because any employer will pay for results, hands down. So show me the results and you'll get paid. This is a meritocracy.
Yeah, work ethic has changed. I think the idea of
It has.
what we're owed, right? This idea
Right. The entitlement.
I'm owed something.
It should be pay, should be a meritocracy, and it should be based on results.
Wow, absolutely. And so as you were working your way through a successful career in finance, what were some of the, I guess, inflection points or dominoes that fell that helped you realize that you were destined to enter into the realm of entrepreneurship? And can you tell me a little bit about how you set yourself up financially and emotionally to do that? Because I think that there's often this feeling of, oh, I'm going to go run and do this thing. But ultimately, like, you come up against all of your own stuff every single time you do. I mean, you're literally doubling down on who you are. So what were the dominoes that fell? What did it feel like? What had to line up to make it work?
So nothing was planned for me. It was just, it ended up being a confluence of factors that created my first entrepreneurial opportunity, which, by the way, ended up being phenomenally successful. And that initial taste of being phenomenally successful is what kept me going and kept me trying and doing successively thereafter. So I had a full-time job. I was working at a large venture capital fund. I had an amazing career, great people I worked with, great career opportunity, great pay. And again, a romantic relationship. I was dating someone who was trying to figure out what to do with his life. And I would leave for work in the morning and he'd be sitting on my couch, and I would come home from work and he'd still be sitting on my couch. And it's like, we are going to figure out a way for you to get off the couch. So we started a business together and had never done this before. I set up the legal structure. I figured out the trademarks. I did a lot of groundwork to set up the business, but he actually had the know-how in the industry. We started something in the aftermarket auto parts space. So he had the market knowledge and the product knowledge to get the assortment right and to set up this business. And, we went from starting this company and doing a few $1,000s in sales, like the first month or two, to a few months later going to tens of thousands of dollars of sales, to going to millions of dollars of sales. And so it was a confluence, and it really teaches you better together, complementary skill sets. I had a certain wheelhouse of talent that came from my finance, operational background, working with businesses at arm's length, not running a business, but advising them as an investment banker, investing them as a private equity professional, investing in them as a venture capitalist, and this person, market knowledge. And together we created a very successful business, which I sold, shortly thereafter. And once I got a taste of that, I was working full time. I had a full-time job. I was doing nights. I was doing weekends. And once I had that experience, I then leapt over to the dark side, left my job, started another business, which ironically was not as successful and was a huge learning experience because this next company, was profitable and just couldn't scale. And I learned a million lessons about what I did wrong.
Ladies, I'd like to take a moment from this week's episode to bring you a really important message from one of our sponsors. If you're frustrated with high taxes on your investments, well, FREC can really help. Everyone right now is thinking about taxes and what they're doing with their investment strategies. But with FREC, you get similar market returns of indices like the S&P 500 while saving on capital gains taxes at the same time. Their daily tax loss harvesting can potentially save you thousands every year and even more returns when you reinvest those savings. Doesn't that sound incredible? So if you're looking to reduce your tax burden and increase your returns, FREC is designed just for you. And the best part, you get all of this for fees starting at just 0.1%. Yeah, 0.1%. So ladies, if you're ready to keep more of your returns, visit frec.com. That's FREC.com and discover how direct indexing can transform your investing. Frec.com, where smarter investing meets tax efficiency. Now we know investing involves risk, including risk of loss. Brokerage services provided by Frex Securities LLC, member FINRA SIPC, and advisory services provided by affiliate Freck Advisors LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. Fees vary based on direct investment. Back to the show.
And not every business is a hockey stick where it just like grows like a weed. I mean, everyone should have a successful experience to know what that high is like, but it can be incredibly hard to have product market fit. And sometimes you just can't get there, or you can mildly get there and not get the capital to scale. And, you know, it wasn't successful, but then company number 3 that I didn't give up. I pivoted. I started another business. Company number 3 was wildly successful. I raised venture money. I sold it to QVC. And, you know, then company number 4 was Wander Beauty, and company number 5 has been 5 Cents. And it's just, I continue to be a student of life and a student of entrepreneurship and continue to learn, grow, and evolve.
So what are your parents thinking about this the whole time? So I'm sure in the beginning, I can imagine you saying to your dad, I'm not going to do this. I have this job. And then all of a sudden, boom, you now the lights have turned on. You've discovered something about yourself. And honestly, we can never know less, right? We always just know more. Like we can't unsee things and we can't know less. So what did your family think about all of this as you were getting out there?
You need to have a set of Indian parents to really understand what it feels like to not be valued. Like nothing is ever good enough, right? And so I never had positive reinforcement. I never had like, oh, you're doing a great job or great work. Like that's a very American notion. And it's so fascinating because every day I encourage my 3 children by giving them positive reinforcement. And like, you did such a great job. I'm so proud of you. Like, it's almost that I didn't hear it ever growing up, that I overcompensate and say it 20 times a day. And my husband laughs about it because he's, Lebanese and he, grew up in a similar culture and he understands what that's like. But truly, I did not get positive reinforcement. Never at any step of the way were my parents like, oh, amazing, you got into Cornell. Oh, amazing, you got a job at Goldman Sachs. Oh, amazing, you got into Harvard Business School. Like 0. There was never a point where they gave me some sort of positive reinforcement around my achievements. It was always like, oh, like, great. Like, who cares? Like, it was just this very blasé attitude. And so when I built my first business and I sold it, they were just kind of like very not impressed by it. It was really when I sold company number 3 that became that life-changing exit where I was like, I am now financially going to change the way I have a relationship with my parents and take care of them and be able to give them things that I never thought I could give them. That material thing and changes that I made, experiences that we had together as a family because I took us on all these trips and whatnot that actually changed our relationship and our life, where I think my parents then once were like, oh, she is really smart. Like it took me selling my business, company number 3, for my dad to be like, oh, like you are really smart. You are really like, it's the intelligence almost that I felt like I never got credit for, that it took me selling that business, me buying him a car, taking them on all these vacations, doing all these things for them, having these experiences with them where they were like, oh, this is why you work so hard. This is why, like, this is the reward of the effort and you put in, because my father never really worked very hard and he was successful and he struggled so much with why I work so hard. He was always like, why do you work so hard? Like, you don't need to work so hard. It's like, Dad, I'm like, you were in the right place in the right time. I started a business with very little competition. We live in a different world today. It's getting easier and easier to start a business, which is phenomenal for entrepreneurs out there. It's less money to set. You can set up Gmail, Shopify, like retool, like you can start a business, LegalZoom, like all this stuff didn't exist 20 years ago. And so those barriers to entry have all disappeared. And it's easier to start a business, but yet it's harder to stay in business because there's so much more competition. And, that is just a factor of what's going on in the evolution of technology with entrepreneurship. And I genuinely believe that finally I felt like I got some street cred with my family once I sold my 3rd business.
Finally.
And then finally. It took me a long, long time to get there. But I do think my mom tells me that my father used to brag about me to his friends. I never heard it. I never heard a bit of positive reinforcement. He never, ever told me anything that he was proud of my success. But he apparently used to talk about me. I don't know.
Thanks, Dad. Yeah.
He did, yeah.
So the difference is, obviously exiting the first business and then the third business were different outcomes that changed your life in different ways. One gave you the bug, the other gave you sort of the wealth and also this further capability and capacity to create all the impact, right? It's like when our wealth increases, we can do more, we can support more, we can change the world, we can birth ideas. But from the perspective of your own emotional relationship with money, the first company that you guys exited and sold, what did you do with the money at that time? Was it, I'm going to buy my first house? Did you already, how did you sort of look at where the things went once the liquidity event happened?
So I systematically, with the two companies that I sold and also with many companies that I've invested in that have sold, which has actually yielded a lot of change for my family. Investing in other entrepreneurs has been incredibly rewarding for me on a mental and personal level, where I've learned a lot from said entrepreneurs who've been wildly successful, but financially it's had a tremendous amount of impact in our family. And so, companies I invested in went public or, had market caps of over billions of dollars, multiple. I had early stage in Pinterest, early stage in Dollar Shave Club, early stage in Shopify, all, $1 billion plus outcomes. Mm-hmm. And I successfully have had a strategy, and my strategy is invest in what you know. And I have allocated a significant amount of capital that I have made from investing in my own ventures and being an entrepreneur, and also investing in other entrepreneurs. And I put it back in the ecosystem. And I put it back in the entrepreneurial ecosystem of investing in underrepresented founders, lots of different sectors and areas where I'm passionate. I'm very passionate about consumer and beauty. I have 7 brands selling at Sephora, 4 selling at Target, or 3 selling at Ulta. And so I believe in investing in what I know. And I really have my pulse on what's going on in early stage investing through my fund. And I'm constantly meeting entrepreneurs. I'm constantly networking and really spend a lot of time on that. However, I believe in diversification. So yes, I have taken a lot of what I've made and invested in real estate. I have commercial real estate. I have residential real estate. I have lots of different properties and, different types. And that does require management. And I do have people who are actually doing that because I'm busy working. And I think that's a very important part of the strategy. I believe real estate should be a part of everyone's roadmap if it can be. And there are many ways to buy real estate, even if you don't have the money to come up with down payments. So there's so many different types of ways to play in real estate, but real estate is a big part of my strategy. Investing in startups is another part of my strategy. And then the third piece is one where I made a lot of mistakes and I learned a lot. So I believed that because I was so busy working and because I didn't have the time and energy to follow the market, I needed to take all the money I made and give it to professional money managers. And this is the biggest mistake I made. I genuinely did not trust myself and did not feel like I had the bandwidth to manage my funds in the public market and to manage my stock portfolio, manage my bond portfolio. So I went out to these very fancy banks and very fancy private wealth managers. And for many years, they managed my money until I read every personal finance book out there. And I realized that I could be doing this myself and do a very easy, simple strategy. And I have now taught this strategy to so many entrepreneurs. Like one of my girlfriends, a very successful entrepreneur in New York who built and sold a business, literally came and sat on my dining table and I showed her how I do everything. Like, I believe that you should just weighted average over time, invest in the market, invest in broad market indices, like invest in a mix of stock and bonds, depending on your investment appetite and the stage you are in your life and your career, how much risk you want to take versus how much income you want in versus how much appreciation you want to achieve. And I just have created my own Fidelity and my own Vanguard accounts, and I've managed a lot of my own money at this stage. And I'm doing better than I've ever done before.
Hell yeah. That's so sexy.
Here I am for so many years, yes, earning and making a lot of money, but also paying out a lot of money in fees because I was paying professional managers to manage my portfolio and to diversify me. And they were putting me in this and putting me in that. And I was like, yes, I don't have the energy and the bandwidth to manage individual stuff. I'm the first to admit that I need to spend my mind share building my businesses. That is where my brain is best used and my time and my energy is best used. But that doesn't mean I can't own the S&P index and own, a technology index and own bonds and own treasuries and diversify my portfolio and have insane returns year after year. And by the way, also set my children up in a way that my parents never set me up, and continually put small amounts of money consistently over time for my children, which is now multiplied and become meaningful now that they're 12 and 10.
That is so exciting. And congratulations. I feel like what I'm hearing is a lot of self-responsibility and ownership of the outcomes of your life and that which you are looking to create. And it's extremely powerful. You mentioned your kids, and I think would be great to sort of double click on married life and mom life and sort of the ways in which you're navigating financial conversations at home. How do you and your partner sit down and talk about money and where things are being invested? Is it pretty separate? Are you guys I'm doing my thing, you're doing your thing? Are there collaborative conversations? What do money conversations at home look like?
It's fascinating because I've had a successive string of partners and I've been married more than once. And so I've learned the hard way that I believe in partnership and marriage, and I believe in a financial partnership. I really am committed in my marriage. We make all of our financial decisions together. So we definitely have earned our own money and have, money that we had before we met each other and had before, we were, deeply involved with each other. And all our decision making though is truly joint. And I love having a thought partner in every decision. So before I'm going to buy something with money I earned that is going to be mine, or it's something that we are buying together, regardless, it's always a conversation. We are very much, I have a thought partner and I have someone who has the same values with me when it comes to money. And I think that's the hardest thing. I think a lot, what is 50% of divorce stems around money, and it stems around values and money. So I think one of the biggest decisions you make in life is the partner you choose to spend your life with. Should you decide to make that choice, make it wisely and make sure that your values are the same, because I made that choice and didn't make it wisely and, suffer the consequences of it. And I do believe that when you work very hard and you put your head down and you are constantly working and earning and you don't actually have the time and the bandwidth to enjoy what you're earning, and you have a partner who's then enjoying their life and you're not, there is a resentment that builds over time. And so, I suffered through that for a very long time. And now I'm on the same page when it comes to values of what we do and how we do it. And, decisions about what car to have and where to live and where to go on vacation are all joint decisions. And yes, we grew up totally differently. My husband, Carl, grew up in Lebanon, and a lot of his childhood was, stemmed around war and, difficulties and, currency issues and whatnot. And I had a very boom and bust, upbringing, a lot of boom, I would say. And, my parents were very lavish with me, and we traveled the world. We saw all these amazing things. And I appreciate a lot of what I got from that. And I appreciate some of these really amazing experiences that I had as a child. But I am incredibly cautious and deliberate to not spoil my children, because I see in my family, in the greater context of my family, how those values of spending, doing, living, it breeds generation to generation of this entitlement, and, it can be very challenging to navigate. And so I hope that I've taught my children the value of money, and that yes, they should have wonderful things and enjoy wonderful things that they can afford, that they have put the time and energy into getting. But at the same time, not every day is a Sunday. And not every vacation is a 7-star experience that they want it to be.
I think that's so interesting. I mean, the idea of our kids, kids will grow up with their own traumas that we can't save them from, right? And so we can certainly try to create and provide different constructs and boundaries and educate and all these things. And yet, by virtue of being born, they're just going to emerge with their own sets of I wish, or I should have, or why I didn't. And there's
My
so much-
son loves sneakers, and he could buy sneakers every day of the week and twice on Sunday. And I can afford to actually buy him sneakers 7 days a week. However, I don't, as a deliberate choice around teaching him the value around money. And he has to do chores around the house, and he throws out the garbage, and he put the packages, and he does the recycling, and like he earns, and then he gets to spend. And that is just a construct that I have taught them early on that I wish my parents taught me.
Oh, absolutely. It's so fascinating. It'll be interesting to see like how they end up looking at what's possible in the world for them. I mean, they've seen you certainly just be a prolific entrepreneur and an investor. And, do they have an understanding of like what mom does day to day and sort of
Oh, they do. They do. Oh my God, they do. And what's so fascinating is COVID took down all of the boundaries between work and home, and just me working at home and being around, and the kids like engaging in conversation around everything I'm doing and hearing me on the phone, knowing what's happening, deals that are happening, money that's trading hands, real estate deals that are happening. Like my children are fully in the know about what is going on for me at work. And it's fascinating because my daughter's incredibly motivated to be an entrepreneur. She has her own business. She has her own accessories business. She, did phenomenally. She made 100 bracelets before going to New York this summer. We live in Miami, but we go to New York for the summer every summer. And she made all of this merchandise, spent hours and hours and time and energy, to then go and sell all of this in New York, and then took all of those savings and then told me, Mom, invest them for me at Fidelity. While my son is like makes $2 and he's like, buy me sneakers. So it's like fascinating how they grew up in the same household with the same parents, with the same values. However, they are just so different. And you have to learn to appreciate that one's a spender and one's a saver.
Totally. And they're going to get to learn to tell the tale of how that's impacted, their
100%.
Their life. Within your family, did your sister end up being entrepreneurial? How?
No, not at all. Not at all. Just never, my mom never had a career and never worked outside of the home, although, raising children is very much a job, and I'm well aware of that as I raised 3 children of my own. And I saw that dependency, and I think it was fuel for me. I think when you grow up in the construct of a traditional marriage and you watch, the father be the breadwinner and the mother be financially dependent and have to ask for things, like I just never wanted that for myself. Like while I very much engage with every single decision being made, I really do talk to my husband about it, because I want us to be on the same page and build to grow together and grow together and invest together. And there are things that I do and I take risks that he doesn't take. So, I believe the construct of marriage today is his, hers, and ours. And that seems to just work really well for me. The construct of marriage many years ago was just ours, which is wonderful. And that actually works really well for a lot of different couples. For me personally, it's a his, hers, and ours. So I can take risks that he wouldn't normally feel comfortable with money that I've, created and built myself. And, he can do things that he thinks make sense for him.
I love that. That's so fun. It makes it really exciting. As we sort of come to a close, I've got a few juicy questions that I always love to dig a little bit deeper. The first is legacy. As you're sort of looking at this body of work that you're creating, I mean, we are living longer than ever now. So there's a really high chance that you will be around to a young 100 and something, which puts you pretty much at a teenager in the context of living a very long life. What is it that you hope to leave as legacy on this planet, Divya?
I think generosity and, compassion and help for others, and really support, knowledge. I believe my footprint in the community is to literally pave the way and help others in any way I can, whether it's teaching them things I learned, mistakes I made. I'm consistently helping other entrepreneurs, as many entrepreneurs have helped me along the way in my journey. So questions how do I do this? Or what legal structure should I use? And I'm having this issue with an employee and I need to put them on a performance review. I serve as a resource for not just entrepreneurs in my portfolio, but just in a wider community of friends and peers And I hope to always do that. And I hope to always be as generous with my time as I can be.
I love that. And then as you are sort of looking at, obviously, not just investing your resources and sort of creating this stable, robust financial future, what are some of the fun things that you are enjoying spending your money on? Where do you have the most fun with your cash?
Travel, hands down travel. I think travel just builds life experiences. From a young age, I was very privileged to be able to see the world. My parents took me to Europe and Asia all the time. I used to go to India, once or twice a year. I used to travel from there to lots of neighboring countries through Southeast Asia. We went to Europe regularly. I believe that travel is such an amazing immersive experience because you get immersed in culture and food and in an environment, and it just really sparks a lot of creativity within me. Whenever I'm in a rut or I'm frustrated with work, I need a break. I need a reset. I need to take a trip. And my husband loves to travel too. Now having a 7-month-old baby, it's not the way it used to be, or we would just get on a plane and just do it. But, now it has more logistics and more things that need to be packed. But you'll laugh. We travel often with carry-on luggage. We just do it. We're not a check-in family. And the kids have their carry-on. This is what you get to take with you. Budget accordingly. Pack your own. I have them pack their own bags. I give them a list of guidelines of pack these chargers, pack your toothbrushes, pack your toothpaste, whatever. And then I'm this much clothes, underwear, whatever. And then they just do it themselves. My kids.
It's brilliant. That's a great pro tip. That is.
And they build a sense of responsibility. They love to go to new places. They love to go to water parks. We've been to water parks in all sorts of different countries, which is just bizarre. That they really like it. Museums, culture. The one thing I really indulge in is travel.
I love that. And then my last question, Divya, is, everyone who listens to the show is really here with the spirit of supporting the women who are on the show. And all of us, no matter where we are in our businesses and our lives, we're always calling in something, right? There's always the next thing we're calling in. What is it that we can do to support you? What are you calling in right now?
That's a good question. I think that just supporting the brand that I'm building would be amazing. Women will vote with their wallets, and they invest and spend their money and buy products from brands that mirror their values. And I think what I'm building with Wander Beauty, effortless essentials for wherever you wander, and the sensory experience and fragrance I'm building with 5 Sense, that's the support that I would really love.
Amazing. You got it. Divya, you are a bright, shining light. Thank you for your contributions to the entrepreneurial world. I think that we're all so lucky to be able to have you as someone to look up to and someone to also just be real with us. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Getting Rich Together. Please take a minute to subscribe. And if you like this episode, I'd love it if you could share it with a friend who is ready to elevate their financial future. Until next time, let's keep getting rich together.